Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting for more people to jump in. I think we're at 40 people right now. That's wonderful. We'll give it another minute or so for the room to fill up and we'll get started. See, we're in the 50s now. Maybe I'll do a little bit of housekeeping in advance so we can maximize our time here. So housekeeping. There is a chat function at the bottom of your screen. You'll see. I'd ask that please everybody that's on this call right now, let us know where you're calling from. Let us know who you're with, what part of the value chain you're in. We just ask that everybody keep the comments respectful, please. And then we do also have a Q&A function, which is, I believe, just to the right of the chat button there. I'd encourage folks to please put your questions in throughout the presentation, and we're going to make sure to do our best to get the panelists to answer them in the Q&A session. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website, calgaryhydrogen.ca, next week. And while we wait for people to arrive, I would like to let everybody know that we announce our upcoming events on our LinkedIn page and through our mailing list. So if you're not following or subscribed to those, I'd suggest you do so. To make sure you don't miss anything, just follow us and keep in touch. We will be having some very exciting reports coming out here very soon from the hub, and we'll be having our next Hub at the Pub event in the end of October with the exact dates for all those to be released fairly quickly here. So I see some people are commenting. Oh, Jared is here. Abraham Mastery with Trimac, Randy Litton, Azola, Lisa Doig. Oh, excellent. A lot of familiar faces here. It's great to have everyone here. Really appreciate you taking some time to come and listen. So maybe what we'll do is we'll get started with a land acknowledgement. So the hub, located in the heart of southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, which includes the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nation. The City of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. Now that we've started this webinar in a good way, I can introduce myself. And I'm sure most of you folks have seen me, probably too much lately. But my name is Zach Cunningham, and I lead the Calgary Region Hydrogen Hub. And I want to thank everybody in attendance again for taking some time out of their busy days and to come and learn about some of the hydrogen and demand projects that are in Calgary. And hopefully this webinar will help highlight the need for hydrogen fueling infrastructure within the region. This webinar and topic directly speaks to one of the main goals here at the Hub, and that is to directly assist in aggregating demand and help connect it to supply. I think a great outcome from this webinar is just increased awareness that we actually do have hydrogen demand within the city, and that there is an opportunity for the private sector to take action to meet the needs of these projects, and more broadly for folks here to consider really the long-term impacts and growth potential that could exist if we had consistent hydrogen supply between Calgary and Edmonton, which would theoretically open up a transportation corridor between the two cities. So it's bigger than just these pilots. There is really a big picture growth story here. But enough for me. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to pass it over to them to present for around 10 or 15 minutes or so, at which point we will have a Q&A period. So we have three panelists with very exciting projects that are either in the city of Calgary or interface with Calgary. They are Terry Johnson, Brian Lee, and Philippa Wagner. So let me start with Terry. You know, Terry has certainly been, I've heard before terms such as force of nature and a variety of different other terms. And she is really, you know, taking a strong leadership role in hydrogen advancement within the province. And Terry is the manager of industry advancement at the AMTA, Alberta Motor Transport Association. She plays a key role in AMTA's efforts to advance hydrogen-powered vehicles and infrastructure. She's involved in projects like the Alberta Zero Emissions Truck Electrification Collaboration, AZETEC, which focuses on developing and operating heavy-duty hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles in the province. Additionally, she's working with the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Development Project, which aims to build and operate Alberta's first hydrogen fueling station for heavy-duty vehicles. And our second panelist is Brian Lee. He's an engineering business strategist with Fleet Transition Calgary Transit Service Vehicles. And Brian's a professional engineer who is very passionate about energy systems, renewable energy, sustainability practices, and zero emission transportation. His work includes program development, solar PV development, green buildings, building certification, energy benchmarking, project management, and transit projects. All things energy from what I'm seeing here. So Brian earned his civil engineering degree at the University of Calgary, specializing in energy and environment. And last but certainly not least is Philippa Wagner, who's a great asset to the hub and a participant on the leadership team. And she's a Green Fleet Program Manager with Fleet and Inventory with the City of Calgary. Philippa has over 25 years of municipal government, environmental, and program management experience. Many of those years were on municipal waste management, where she implemented and managed residential waste diversion programs, including leading the implementation of Calgary's Green Card program in 2017. After that highlight, she decided to explore other ways to green municipal services. She managed the public-private partnership agreement for Calgary Transit's Stoney Transit Facility, a LEED Gold building, before going into fleet and inventory in 2023. In her current role as Green Fleet Program Manager, Philippa is applying her passion for environmental stewardship to lead the implementation of the City of Calgary's Green Fleet strategy. Wow. With that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Terry, to start us off with a little bit about what you're up to and what AMTA is up to.
Fantastic. So I've got my slide deck up here. I'm assuming we can see.
Good on my end.
Fantastic. Yeah, so thanks so much, Zach, for inviting AMTA here. It's a great opportunity to talk to people about heavy duty transportation and what we're seeing. The Alberta Motor Transport Association takes care and represents the commercial carriers in Alberta. We have about 18,000 members and we're about 87 years old already. So we're a long-term organization that's working within transportation. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the pilots that we've done, but first off, for those who aren't maybe as familiar with fuel cell vehicles, I'll just start off with this slide. It talks a little bit about the fuel cell, and you can see here it's a little bit different than your typical ICE or internal combustion engine vehicle. So instead of having a transmission up front here, you now have the electric auxiliaries and then the fuel cell. Instead of a diesel fuel tank, you are going to have a battery as well as your hydrogen supply here. And instead of a driveline that you typically see in a standard vehicle, you've now got an electric drivetrain. And the reason we're looking at these fuel cell electric vehicles is because they are zero emissions. AMTA has been able to do quite a few vehicle trials. One of the big ones that we did was the hydrogen vehicle demonstrations. This was supported by Prairie Can, and at the beginning of 2022, we started bringing in hydrogen vehicles to Alberta. We were able to first off start off showing drivers and organizations that these fuel cell vehicles existed, and that program advanced onto the actual real world demonstrations with the vehicles. So we had 30 different carriers that had come in and had trialed these fuel cell electric vehicles in their carrier operations, and they were able to see themselves hydrogen fueling. They were able to understand how the vehicle operates different in their organization. And just the benefits that they would be able to see and some of the new challenges that they might see integrating these vehicles into their fleets. One of the projects that AMTA is better known for is for the Alberta Zero Emission Truck Electrification Collaboration. This is a project that was sponsored by Emissions Reduction Alberta, and it was to build 2 fuel cell electric vehicles. The reason these vehicles are different is because they're built specifically for Canadian weights and our cold temperatures, also specifically for long haul. And the big difference here is the pay differential. On the vehicles that I had shown you on the last page, they were geared for 82,000 pounds, which is US weights. Canada weights are heavier. They're 140,000 pounds. So this vehicle, we're hoping will be able to pull that 140,000 pounds, which is Canadian payloads. For a carrier, this is a huge differentiator. Instead of having to cut their load in half using hydrogen, they're now able to pull a full load, and that is very important to them. So you see the truck here from the back. We've got you can see all the different hydrogen canisters. This is as the vehicle was being built. So you're seeing this in real time here. Here you'll see off to the side all the hydrogen canisters. Again, we have all sorts of different equipment up in this H-Rex, and then the electric drive. And here we're fueling over at Air Products, and we're doing a little bit of venting and purging with our incredible mechanic, Darren from Diesel Tech Industries. So these are all parts of the ecosystem. There's trucks, but then we have to build out fueling, and we have to build out mechanics and everything like that. So this is all what's been done with this hydrogen vehicle demonstration. I'll put the video in the comments later so that you can take a look at it, and then you can actually take a look at a video of the vehicle being built. So that's an exciting thing that was on that slide. In Alberta, in Edmonton specifically, we've got 3 different places for fueling. There's the Suncor refinery, which was part of the EVID project, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Development. Here you'll see the pressure swing absorption and the compressor and the bumping cabinet that then goes off to another location where the fueling and dispensing is. So this is one method of fueling that we have in Edmonton. There's also the Air Products. They have these fuel dispensers. And huge shout out to Zola here. I saw that Jared and Colin are both on the call. They just opened up their first fueling systems center here with Calgary Transit, and doing a fantastic job with on-site distributed production. Another thing that we're going to need to take that hydrogen from a place like Air Products or Suncor and deliver it to where it's being dispensed in the centralized production, you need hydrogen storage. So AMTA has been able to acquire 2 of these hydrogen storage / transport fuelers, and these are critical to take hydrogen from one spot and transport it to the other before we have pipelines and infrastructure like that in place. Along with all the trials that we've been doing, there's tons of training. You'll see here up at the top, just familiarizing drivers and industry with these trucks and how they're different, what is under the hood and where the hydrogen is. We've been doing a lot with government, entertaining with government and letting them know what's coming up with hydrogen fueling, working with students, working with first responders, working with the drivers themselves, teaching them how to drive these trucks, how they're different, and of course, working with the carriers themselves in their organizations to understand how these vehicles can support them. So far in Canada, we've been able to work with the Nikola, the Hyzon, the AZETEC, or the trucks that we showed before. There's the New Flyer buses that I'm sure Brian will be talking about later in the City of Calgary. And we will be able to bring a Hyundai fuel cell electric vehicle here later this year, compliments of HTEC and their program, to Alberta so that we can try driving the Hyundai here in Alberta as well. Big shout out for hydrogen diesel dual fuel. So far, everything I've been showing you has been fuel cell electric, which provides 0 emissions. The hydrogen diesel dual fuel is another technology that is being used in industry that is providing reduced emissions. So all sorts of forms of vehicles, what they do is they take a diesel retrofit kit and put that on the engine. So in the case of this vehicle, you will have an engine, you will have a drive train or a drive line back here, and you will have hydrogen on the back of the vehicle as well. So it's a different configuration that will help to reduce emissions. AMTA is also involved in the Zero Emission Truck Test Bed, which is a project sponsored by Transport Canada in partnership with Deloitte. We have 1 vehicle that's battery electric traveling Surrey to Mount Vernon, and then we've got 3 here in Alberta that are going to be trying to work that Edmonton to Calgary corridor. And that's where you come in, Zach, because AMTA represents Edmonton and Calgary. Right now, there's only hydrogen in Edmonton. We need to get it down into Calgary as well so that we can complete that big corridor. So what are we looking at here when we do the ZET trial? What is it the same thing as what we're doing with the others? No, this is very different. We're taking a look at various kinds of vehicles, understanding prototypes versus production vehicles versus pre-production vehicles, and what these vehicles operate like when they're on the road. Some of them are 70 kilograms. The the hydrogen diesel dual fuel is only 15 kilograms of hydrogen that goes in. Some of them are at 350, some of them are at 700, others, it varies depending on the vehicle as to the type of hydrogen. Each of them can go a different amount of kilometers, and we're trying to validate that not only off of the specs from the vehicle manufacturer, but real world trials. And this is not an error here with 20,000 kilometers. Your hydrogen diesel dual fuel will extend the range of a conventional truck, so it adds in those extras. So this is assuming one of the largest engines. And taking a look too with regards to the weight, this AZETEC, that is our little baby here, is looking at 140, whereas the others are looking at 86,000. And then taking a look at the e-axles as well, and the different vehicles and the configurations. So there's a lot to be learned through this trial as well. And here, back in 2022, we were just taking a look at vehicles. 2024, we were actually driving them on the road. And now 2025, we have a lot more of the vehicles that we're able to run on the road. That's because of the Suncor and the air products, and of course the Azola fueling that is here in the region. So that's what I have to present. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, Terry. Thank you so much for that illuminating presentation. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Brian. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Calgary Transit's up to?
Okay, no, thanks, Doug, for inviting Calgary Transit. Very happy to be here. Let me share my screen here. How does this look?
Good on my end.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, good afternoon, everybody. So I'll go a little bit about what the proposed plans are for Calgary Transit, working on to explore the possibilities of integrating FCBs in our fleet. Okay, a little bit of a quick agenda. So we'll go over why we're doing this. We'll recap of what was done so far and where we're at with hydrogen right now. I will chat a bit about the Alberta Zero Emission Hydrogen Transit Project currently happening in Edmonton and Strathcona County, and how this is relevant to Calgary Transit. Next, I will talk about the ongoing Calgary hydrogen fuel and pilot fleet feasibility study, where we're exploring what it would take to operate a very small fleet of hydrogen buses and a temporary fueling station at our transit facility. And finally, I'll go over some of the next steps for us. Can you guys still see my screen here?
Yes, so you just turned it off now, Brian, so I think
okay. Okay, sorry, there you go. Okay. Okay, a little bit of a background. So, as most of you probably may know, the City of Calgary declared a climate emergency in 2021, and as such, the corporation developed the Calgary Climate Strategy, where we outline where we're at in terms of emission and where we need to go. So to support this strategy, Calgary Transit has been exploring the feasibility of zero emission propulsion technologies, mostly battery electric buses and fuel cell electric buses. You probably saw the announcement about the purchase of 120 battery electric buses that we'll be receiving in 2027. So the hydrogen work that we're doing is part of the same strategy, but on a different branch of the technologies we're exploring right now. So Calgary Transit also did a zero emission bus transition plan back in 2023. And again, like it was mostly focused on BEBs and FCBs. So what have we been doing? So again, as part of this transition plan, Calgary has played a role in the Alberta Zero Emission Hydrogen Transit Project, so the AZ project, which involved the demonstration of 2 hydrogen fuel cell electric buses in real world condition in Edmonton and Strathcona. So this project is really key for us to understand whether FCBs can meet the demanding requirements of daily bus operation in cold weather climates, right? So at the moment, those buses are mostly being run by transit agencies in warmer climates. So we want to make sure like we can run those efficiently and reliably, here in Calgary. Um, so ultimately, like we're also hoping that the result of the project would be valuable, like not only to like us, but also like to other transit agencies, like um, across the country, where they're also transitioning to zero emission technology. And I'll chat more about that in a few slides here. Another initiative that Calgary Transit is doing is a hydrogen fueling and pilot feasibility study, which is still underway right now, to evaluate the current hydrogen supply chain and fueling equipment to support a small hydrogen fleet of buses at one of our transit facility. Finally, we're also collaborating with Philippa's team at Fleet and Inventory on a hydrogen diesel dual fuel RFP. So we can have this interim step to see if we can have dual fuel ahead of like a full implementation of hydrogen buses. Okay, so if you look at the slide here, this is a little bit of an overview of how the AZ project is set up and who are like the project partners. From top to bottom, you have the project funder, which is the ERA, and the project lead is the City of Edmonton. AZETEC, who's a private firm, is responsible for project management and the fleet transition planning, which they develop. Edmonton Transit and Strathcona County are the agencies piloting the buses, with Calgary Transit and Rome Transit as mostly participant at the moment. The bottom left corner, you can see that the transit accelerator and the team at the University of Alberta was engaged to help us collect the data and analyze the whole results and give us a report at the end. Finally, like you can see, the bus is from New Flyer. It's one of the Excelsior Charge H2 bus. And the fuel is mostly being supplied right now by Suncor at their facility in Edmonton. We also have alternate suppliers, so in case the supply is not available from Suncor, we can also procure hydrogen from either Air Liquide or Air Product. Okay, so what have we accomplished to date? So since the project began around the end of 2021, we procured two new flyer buses, which use the Ballard's fuel cell system. We designed and constructed hydrogen compliance maintenance bay at Edmonton Transit Service, and also an outdoor storage structure in Strathcona. Commissioning and operation of hydrogen and supply and purification equipment was also completed at Suncor, so we can use that to fuel the buses. Also good to know that those two buses, they are in regular, revenue service in both Edmonton and Strathcona. So we're not just, testing the buses in like closed loop systems or like, in their own like facilities. They are in service in Edmonton. So data collection and analysis right now has over 15,000 kilometers of data, as well as 45,000 kilometers of BEBs and 185,000 kilometers of diesel bus operation. So again, they wanted to collect data from BEBs and also like the diesel buses as a comparison. Early data, though not conclusive yet, shows that those buses are performing well, and they have like very good potential to replace some of their like older fleet of vehicles. So the completion of their zero emission transition and regional hydrogen supply plans for 4 transit public agencies, so like the 4 mentioned, has been completed. And again, Calgary Transit is using that as kind of like a roadmap for us right now to see how we can again implement hydrogen buses in the future. Of course, in most projects, there's a few challenges. So we have had some technical issues at the Suncor plant, which unfortunately resulted in interruption of the hydrogen supply. During those time, like we had to rely on our other fuel partners, so like Air Liquide and Air Products. Again, I want to stress that it is a test pilot project, so like we expected to learn a lot from like what could break, and again, like lots of lessons learned, and in the future we'll use those lessons to make our like operation of FCBs more efficient. The buses also had issues in terms of like fit and finish, and again, like we Edmonton and Strathcona had to deal with those like internally with the maintenance fleet and whatnot. So also a learning curve for them in terms of like how those new buses are being produced and delivered to the maintenance staff. So another learning aspect of the project. So as of right now, the project has been extended until at least February 2026. So it's mostly to allow more time to collect more winter data, uh, because due to those delays, like there was a bit of a gap into like in winter condition testing. So again, we'll go for the upcoming winter season and collect more data. Okay, next, I'll talk about like what we are doing in Calgary Transit. So, like I said before, we are undergoing a hydrogen fueling and pilot feed study, where we want to identify, evaluate the hydrogen fuel chain and what kind of equipment is available right now in the market. Um, Ultimately, the goal is to look at potentially having a pilot project at one of our like transit facility, right? So one of the things that we cannot realize is like, like if you want to like introduce hydrogen in our like um, as a source of fuel for Calgary Transit, we want to make sure we understand like the whole supply chain, like what we have to change at our facilities, how will that impact like our maintenance staff and whatnot. And the study is mostly broken down to like 2 phases. So phase 1 is about the hydrogen supply in Alberta and what kind of like fueling equipment we would need at our facility. Phase 2, on the other hand, is more about the scenarios and like uh, and what it means in terms of like the financial aspect and the GD performance of like this kind of technology. And later on, I'll show a little bit of a roadmap of like what that might look like. So for the study, we are looking at mostly a couple of options in terms of fueling. So you can see on the screen here, like option 1 and 2, we are assuming liquid hydrogen supply to be delivered at our Stony facility with mobile or semi-permanent hydrogen storage. Option 3 here, we are assuming a gaseous hydrogen supply with, again, a mobile or semi-permanent storage and dispensing equipment on site. And similarly to like option 1 and 2, option 3 was further broken down into green or gray hydrogen. So again, we want to understand like the very comprehensive aspect of like the hydrogen supply right now. Option 4, that one we're looking at producing our like own hydrogen using biomethanol. And again, it's more of a semi-permanent setup on site. You also notice that we're looking at both a pilot short-term project, but also how does that translate into a more like long-term solution for Calgary Transit. And for the long-term option, we are looking at a more permanent liquid supply with on-site storage and fueling facility, but also like an on-site gaseous production and fueling system where we use electrolysis to break down water into hydrogen and oxygen. One of the other outcome that I can talk about from the study is this proposed roadmap of what the deployment of a fleet of FCB might look like for Calgary Transit. I really want to stress that this is just a preliminary plan. We have no confirmed funding for any of this, but we do have to start somewhere, right? And be ready when the opportunity presents itself. If you look at the from top to bottom, again, it's mostly broken down between a proposed pilot phase that would ideally run between the mid 2027 to mid 2029 with a fleet of between 3 to 12 vehicles. And then if the pilot proved to be successful, and there's a lot of benefit to integrate more FCBs in our fleet, we would start work in the early 2030s on a more permanent fueling infrastructure before really scaling up in the mid 2035. Again, this whole plan is very, it's just in the planning phase right now, right? So for this to come to fruition, like, and Terry and Zach talk a little bit about that, like we need several things to happen, right? So we need approved funding, and hopefully like the price of hydrogen and the buses will go down. We need a very robust hydrogen supply chain in Calgary. Obviously, we can't run buses if we can't fuel them. Um, Also, hopefully, like we'll see some advancement in the technology side. You know, with more range, less complex fueling systems, and green, you know, green hydrogen being more easily available. Okay, last slide here. So in terms of next step, here's what we're looking on what's coming in on the horizon for us. So once we get the data from the AZ project, we'll use that in our decision-making process and potential operation of future FCBs. Also, if we can obviously get a reliable supply of hydrogen in Calgary, we will collaborate with either ETA or STA to see if we can get one of their pilot bus in Calgary so we can get our hands on it and, you know, like test it out and see how it does on our roads. We will complete the hydrogen feasibility study and hopefully like share the results very soon with our partners. And again, finally, like we're looking for like, you know, funding opportunities to fund a potential pilot project. That's all I have for today. I'll give it back to you, Zach.
Great. Thank you so
Everybody.
much, Brian. That was a great presentation. You know, for me, what really stood out was your long-term, again, very, very much a
Yeah.
draft plan, but it's
So,
very interesting to me that shows, you know, a hydrogen supply in the near term could potentially unlock a lot of growth down the road in the future. So I think that's an important consideration to make. Maybe, Brian, I'll get you to stop sharing your screen and I'll pass it over to
yes.
Philippa if you don't mind, Philippa, that'd be wonderful.
Okay, is that coming through okay yet?
See
No?
myself, I don't see your presentation.
Oh, you know what? I think I may need to do one more thing.
Sure. There we
There,
go.
there we go. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yes, so building on Brian's presentation, obviously I'm with a different area at the City of Calgary, so some of my presentation will be an overlap, but I'll be talking about some things that are outside of the transit scope. So I'll just give you a bit of background about the City of Calgary's fleet. So Fleet and Inventory manages and maintains more than 5,000 pieces of vehicles and pieces of equipment for the City of Calgary. And the exception, and this is why I'm separate from Brian, is that we don't manage buses or light rail transit. We also don't manage fire trucks or police vehicles, as those are managed through other work groups at the city. So when we talk about the Green Fleet strategy, which is what I'll be focusing on, it's all of those other pieces of vehicles and equipment. So it's very diverse, unlike transit that has like buses and trains and fire truck, and then fire who has fire trucks. Our fleet is incredibly diverse. We have over 275 vehicle types. And so that's everything from mowers and ice resurfacers to garbage trucks and graders. So that's one of the big differences, but still a large fleet of 5,000 vehicles. We have work sites all across the city, and so these are just a few of the ones, but they're ones that are potential locations where we have larger sites with a bit of diversity in the fleet. And so starting over on the east side, we have East Calgary. That's kind of that middle dot on the east side of the city. Manchester is that very central one just below Calgary. Sarcee Depot is on the west side in that Springbank Hill area. Shepherd is the furthest south dot, the red dot that you have. Spy Hill is the furthest north, and then Spring Gardens is that other one that's just off Deerfoot and 32nd. So those are some of our larger sites. The 3 landfills where a lot of our fleet is located, because we do have a lot of garbage trucks, and those operate out of those 3 landfill sites. So Spy Hill, Shepherd, and East Calgary. And then the other sites are a bit more diverse in their fleet. So this is very much continuing on what Brian has talked about, that in 2021, Council declared a climate emergency, which has led to that Calgary climate strategy, the Pathways to 2020, which set the goals of reducing GHG emissions by 60% by 2030 and by being net zero by 2050. Out of that becomes something called the Climate Implementation Plan, and that's getting down to a little bit more focused areas, and one of those focused areas is mobility. And so that's mobility not only from a community point of view, but also our corporate mobility. And so that led to Fleet and Inventory developing our Green Fleet strategy. And so Green Fleet strategy, you can see here, we have what we call kind of 4 buckets of work that we are doing for different, I guess, areas of ways that we think that we're going to be able to help achieve those greenhouse gas emissions. So one of them is by modernizing our fleet. So this is kind of the ultimate goal for a lot of it, is that we'll be transitioning away from gas and diesel to electric. We're suspecting for our light duty fleet, and then some other options for a medium and heavy duty fleet, which is where hydrogen can come into play. Educating drivers. So we have a lot of operators that operate those vehicles, and there's things that they can do differently to make sure that they are operating in a safe and green manner. So it could be slow acceleration, slow decelerations, and also our idling reduction work is in there as well, recognizing that if we can do as much as possible to eliminate idling when it's not operationally necessary, we'll be saving fuel. We are innovating, so that's supporting testing and designing any new technology. And so that's where a lot of our pilot programs are coming in, including our hydrogen program, that I'll talk about later. And this is really a lot of the work that we're doing now is to try and investigate different options, see how they perform. How do they perform in Calgary? How do they perform with our work and our weather, and see where they will fit in. And finally, procurement. And that's something, again, that we're doing right now along with the education, is that we're really making sure that we're right-sizing the vehicles. It's like, what size of vehicle does this need to be in order to get the work done? What's the most efficient vehicle, so that we're not running larger vehicles unless they need to be, And also another aspect of this is looking at where in the corporation we have underutilized vehicles and trying to offer alternatives for those as well. So we're not just having vehicles that are maybe needed once in a while. Maybe we can combine that once in a while requirement with another business unit's once in a while requirement and avoid having one vehicle altogether. So we have been doing a lot of projects in the 2 years since I've been with Green Fleet, and I'll just kind of highlight some of these. I won't go into them in too much detail, but we have been looking at renewable diesel, so also known as R100 or HDRD, and we've ramped up that program to this year where we use just over 2 million liters of it in the summertime, and that fuel comes with about a 70% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. I've talked a little bit about electrification for our light duty fleet, so that is moving our vehicles over and also installing charging infrastructure to support it. We have purchased 2 of the middle picture at the bottom, which is an off-grid solar charger, and so that can be deployed to areas where we want to test EVs, but we either aren't able to, or it's not feasible, financially feasible to put in charging infrastructure when it is only a pilot until we know there's going to be permanent vehicles there. Idling reduction in green driver training. That was something I mentioned in our education. So we did a campaign in the spring to remind our operators at a few locations. So that's the bold board sign that you'll see in the bottom there. We currently in our fleet are testing a hybrid refuse truck and a fully electric refuse truck. And so the hybrid we've had for getting close to 2 years now. The battery electric truck is just this year. So those are ways that we're looking to reduce emissions. And then finally, the battery electric street sweeper and the battery electric delivery truck were 2 vehicles we tested last year, and they were very short-term tests. Those are opportunities that sometimes we have through our current vendors that they're able to access other pieces of equipment. And so for the street sweeper we had for about a month, the delivery truck was about a month and a half. We were able to test those. So now getting into the relevant project, which is the Advancing Hydrogen in Municipal Fleet. So this is the project that we've received over $2 million in funding from Emissions Reduction Alberta, and we are testing vehicles and equipment as part of this project, and also modifying a maintenance bay so that we start to get some experience with what's required to convert a maintenance facility to be able to manage hydrogen vehicles in the future. And so our plan is to test the following. So we're testing a mix of fuel cell electric, and we're also testing some hydrogen ICE vehicles. And so that's using hydrogen but in an internal combustion engine. So a little bit more traditional, maybe like look and feel different than a fuel cell electric vehicle, but it's a way that we can kind of test a lot of different things. So you see there for Class 8 trucks, we'd like to test 1 fuel cell and 1 hydrogen ICE. And the off-road equipment, an excavator, maybe fuel cell electric, and an ICE backhoe. And then also we're looking for a forklift and a passenger vehicle, and those would both be fuel cell electric. And then outside of that, another area that we're looking to test hydrogen is through testing some hydrogen diesel dual fuel. You'll know from Terry's presentation with the AMTA that hydrogen diesel fuel can be a great way to offset some of your emissions when also just getting into that hydrogen market. A dual fuel vehicle can run entirely on gasoline or on diesel, sorry. And so if for some reason the supply of hydrogen is interrupted, it means that vehicle can still operate, which is incredibly important for a municipal fleet. Our priority is providing service to Calgarians. And so it's very important that we keep rolling. So that hydrogen pilot piece, that ERA project, we've been working quite a bit on the design work for the maintenance bay modifications. That's proceeding very well, and we're working with our facilities group to make that happen, and we're learning a lot as we go away, even in these initial design phases. Unfortunately, we are seeing some delays on both the vehicle, the fueling infrastructure and the vehicle procurement aspects. As we've talked about in other presentations, the fueling infrastructure in Calgary is not up to speed right now for us to be able to deploy any vehicles. And vehicle procurement is changing every day, I think, in the hydrogen space. And we're looking for a little bit of stability to come around so that we're knowing what vehicles would be appropriate for us. There are some vehicles that we could purchase immediately if we had that hydrogen fueling available. And right now our project testing is planned through 2027, and that is already a 12-month extension that we've received from Emissions Reductions Alberta. But there's a lot of potential here, and this is kind of where we are right now. We have a very small seedling. I'm not even sure the seedling is at this point in its germination, but we at least have a seed, and that's where we are right now. But there's huge potential with the City of Calgary. We have over 2,000 medium and heavy duty vehicles. And if hydrogen is proven to be successful and the hydrogen does become the primary fuel for the City of Calgary to replace diesel, this potential is huge. Like I said, 2,000 vehicles. It could replace the combustion of over 10 million liters of diesel. We would also need to be looking at modifying 15 city-operated fuel sites, because all our fuel sites do offer diesel. Only some of them offer gasoline, because as you can imagine, our fleet, almost more of them are diesel than gas. And then also changing maintenance facilities and storage facilities. So that's another aspect. But yeah, the potential can go from this little tiny seedling to massive trees or even an entire forest. So we want to stress that at this point, we're starting small, but if we have room to grow. What's to come next? So right now we actually have an RFP, a request for proposals, out for a hydrogen forklift. So that's out there on the market. It does close on September 3rd. So that closing date is coming soon, or September 4th, I apologize. We are also looking to do an RFP for those conversions for the hydrogen diesel dual fuel. So that is something else that is coming down the pipe very quickly. And we're doing a market scan for what those other vehicles are. As I've mentioned, there's a lot of change in the market, and we need it's something that we'll be doing a lot, but the market scan that we do right now will help inform us as to what our next steps are, and obviously securing that source of hydrogen so that we're able to fuel the vehicles when we start getting any in. And then finally, just as some ideas or areas to go, that if you're looking for more information, I'm certainly willing to entertain any questions. If anyone wants to reach out to me, my email and phone number are there. There is a lot of information on calgary.ca/greenfleet, and there's even reports on a lot of the pilots that we've run, kind of just giving a bit of like a one-pager of how those have gone and the lessons that we've learned. And then also we just want anyone that's in this market to be keeping an eye on opportunities to be able to be a supplier to the city. And so that's at calgary.ca/buy-sell. And there's a sign up opportunities to sign up for what's called a REBA, and that's where anybody putting in bids to anything for the city would need to be signed up for that. Thank you. That is my presentation. Back over to you, Zach.
Great. Thank you, Philippa. I love the highlighting of the blue sky potential here in the city of Calgary, and that's wonderful. Well, we only have 13 minutes. I'm happy to go over a couple minutes if the panelists are able to. If not, we can end early or end on time. But maybe we could do a bit of rapid fire questions here. So, looking at from a systems level perspective, what we like to do here at the hub, and how do we want to optimize infrastructure, certainly at these early stages. We don't want to have dead-end pathways that infrastructure installed for a pilot couldn't be used to expand further in the future. So keeping that in mind, maybe I could ask Philippa and Brian to speak from the city's perspective, and I'll ask Terry at AMTA after. How do we work around the process for shared fueling infrastructure, and how do we enable other partners to come on initially besides just the city or in the future? Is there a clear path forward, or do you have some thoughts on how we could do that? Philippa, Brian, I'll ask you first.
Do you want to go first, Philippa? And then I'll
Sure, I will. It is a bit of a tricky one in staying with the city's procurement, is that we do have a lot of rigor around our procurement process, and it's likely that the amount of fuel and the amount we'd be needing to spend is going to be quite high for these pilot projects, just because that economies of scale won't be there. So we do want to abide by, or we will need to abide by the city's procurement opportunities. So, but we are looking to say, what are those partnerships? What are those other small demands across the city that maybe eventually is enough to attract someone to set up some fueling in Calgary?
Yeah, no, thanks, Philippa. And just to add, yeah, again, like Philippa mentioned, right, we are doing a little bit of a coordination inside the city to see which business unit is looking for hydrogen. But again, externally, like I think that's where like the hydrogen hub can play a very key role here. Is like, yeah, reach out to Zach's team to see where we can collaborate and have this again this comprehensive demand kind of like picture for Calgary to attract suppliers and that supply chain in a city, right?
Great. Terry, maybe I'll ask you a little bit specifically about the AMTA and Edmonton partnership on some of the shared fueling infrastructure there. How did that work out? Do you have any kind of comments on that same thread of?
Yeah, it's kind of, so when I was taking a look at one of the slides, I had put in the difference between a production vehicle and a pilot vehicle. So we're really kind of looking at that here too. There are some of the stations that are pilot stations. An example would be the Suncor, but there are that are production stations. Example of that right now in Edmonton would be Azola and Air Products. So those are organizations that are open to contracting hydrogen to different individuals. If you're heavy duty trucks, get a hold of us. If you're another means, contact the Calgary Hydrogen Hub, contact the Edmonton Hydrogen Hub. We know where the hydrogen is, who's producing and who's got a production station and who's got a pilot station. Because in these early days, that is going to be a bit of a problem. So connect with us. We can share our knowledge.
Great. No, I echo that as well. Please feel free to reach out to the hub, and we're happy to connect folks with whoever we can. Maybe Terry, I could bug you again. We're talking future growth specifically in your sector. The trucking sector. We know there's some activity happening in Brooks Newell. And specifically thinking like southern Alberta. Is there maybe some potential there for interfacing with Calgary as well from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working with part of a group that is a Pacific Northwest corridor that connects Alberta, BC down in the States. We're working with another one that is a Western Canada that's connecting all of Canada across into BC. So Brooks Newell is just another connection here in Alberta. We're trying the corridors are the key things. We really need to focus first on those hubs, strong hubs in Edmonton, strong hub in Calgary that can bring us down to Lethbridge, can bring us over to Brooks Newell. And once you've got those hubs, you can interconnect them. So strategically placing your hubs, developing with the City of Calgary, the City of Edmonton, developing those out, and then strategically connecting them with carriers that travel between those regions. Is what we really need to do. So Brooks Newell, Sturgeon County, another organization that's looking at hydrogen. There's quite a few that are out there for different municipalities.
Great. Really appreciate that, Terry. And it really just speaks to lots of collaboration and lots of conversations between municipalities and organizations, right?
100%.
Yeah, great. No, maybe we could jump into a little bit of nuts and bolts of what this would look like, fueling infrastructure requirements. I'll ask each of you if you have any comments. What type of space requirements do you need for your vehicles? Are we limited by specific regions? Philippa, you commented on there's a few different locations potentially it could be placed. I mean, do we need to be thinking close to Highway 2? Do we need to be thinking close to anywhere? Any insights on that? Philippa, I'll ask you
Yeah,
first.
I can start. So, I mean, I think when you're designing something, you're obviously designing it for the largest vehicle that you could have. And so we are looking at Class 8 vehicles, whether they be refuse trucks or some larger trucks that we use for hauling sewage sludge and things like that. So we do need either really good access in and out, so drive in and drive out, or very large turnaround access. So that's kind of one of our big things. As for location across the city, one of the reasons I showed the map of where we are is that we're not tied to one location. We may have a preference, and I think when we've looked at things before, we've kind of looked at things. Ideally, if I was to like get my pick, it would probably be somewhere close to Shepherd, and that's kind of where we'd been looking in the past. However, I don't think at this point we're going for perfect. We don't want that to be what they say, the enemy of actually progress, and so it's like we're willing to look at other areas. Obviously, I would say the closer it is to one of those 6 sites, the more likely we are to be able to do more and get more support from our customers, which are our business units. We're only able to push them so far with being able to drive off site to a long distance somewhere else completely to fuel, that we're going to get pushback from that. So we do like to make it as convenient as we can. So within a radius of one of those 6 sites, likely would be our preference.
Great. Terry, any comments about, specifically the Edmonton and big trucks? What do they need to accommodate Class 8 trucks?
Well, I agree with Philippa 100%. First off, you have to find a place of heavy traffic. So we might not be looking necessarily at the same places as you are, Philippa, for heavy traffic, but heavy traffic is a key thing. You've got to understand where those vehicles are operating and where they're going through. After your heavy traffic, you're bang on with the other one location. We checked out so many locations when we were doing this Encore fueling site, and the large trucks either couldn't get in them, they couldn't turn around on them. You can't have a trailer dropping a load to get into fuel. It doesn't make sense. So it's got to be built to size. And that's why when you're building a fueling station, you need to be consulting the large trucks and understanding their needs for turnarounds. Turnarounds being where they can make those loops and get back on safely to the major highways and roadways. So.
Great. Brian, any comments or kind of echoing?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Philippa mentioned, like similar, like with Calgary Transit, like again, yeah, we don't want to like complicate like the location of any potential fueling station in Calgary. But again, like we have to look at the operational buses. So similar to Philippa, like ideally, like the fueling station would not be too far from like one of our garages. That's where we maintain, operate and fuel like existing buses right now. So like if anything were to happen, we need to like do some work on the bus. Ideally, be like close to like one of those garages across the city. And also, yeah, access again for our buses. We don't want like our operators to waste time, like like in traffic, like so somewhere like that's easily accessible and close to like 1 hour of our main like transit routes. That would be the ideal, but again, like we will have to work with what's available.
Great. Appreciate that. How about pressures? I see a comment, great question from the audience here is, is 350 bar what we should be looking at? Is 700 bar what we need? Where are we at with that? Any comments?
Both.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at ideally both would be available to us so that we're able to fuel all vehicles to the maximum amount that they're able to, right? Those are the 2 standards, and we will likely end up with some of both. So my preference would be that it's both.
Okay, great. I think everyone's in agreement there. Okay, now I know there are a couple funders in the room here. So when we're talking about funding, proposals, trying to move forward on a shared piece of infrastructure, what role do funders have to play? What comments would you have to funders? Should this be a big priority for considering, in moving forward the hydrogen ecosystem? Any comments? Terry, please.
Yeah, AMTA is an NFP not-for-profit. We love doing research projects and understanding how these new technologies are going to be impacting industry. But in order to do that, government funds and funding is critical. So we have had we've had NRCan funding, we've had Emissions Reduction Alberta, we've had Prairie Can funding. Those funders right there have supported thousands of miles on the road and new lessons learned and successes. So thank you so much to the funders that are moving this forward and enabling us to take a look at, is hydrogen a good fit for Alberta?
Great. Okay, maybe a couple more. I know we're running up on time here. I think maybe it'd be worthwhile chatting briefly about ancillary services that would be required as well, right? We talk about certainly hydrogen supply, fueling station delivery partner, pressures, that. But what about some of the other ancillary services? Terry, how did you deal with these with AMTA? we're thinking of a fueling infrastructure or pilots being implemented in the region. How does it work with technicians? You know, understanding that there's not a lot of trained folks here. Utility support. Can the city and AMTA work together on the technician piece, or is this maybe a role for an institution like SATE to get involved? You know, how do we deal with some of these more indirect services? Any thoughts from any of you? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have worked with all of the polytechnics. We have programs that we're doing with SATA and with NATE. Some of the ancillary services that we found have been tow trucks. Tow truck operators don't know how to work with an e-drive. So if they hook up the vehicle incorrectly, they're going to pull all that wiring out there. So a big problem with tow trucks, making sure that they have the education. First responder training has been mandatory for all of our programs that we're working with because they're overseen by a funder. Those funders want to make sure everything is done safely and it's done with lowest risk. So tow trucks, mechanics, hydrogen safe infrastructure, hydrogen bays for working on the vehicles, all those things have come through and they're critical to developing and trialing these vehicles safely.
Yeah, I think I kind of lighten it or equate it to what we're looking at in with the electric vehicle industry as well, right? And so I know the City of Calgary is looking to the states of the world to because they will be training not just our technicians on EV maintenance, but the dealerships and all of the private companies. So it's they've got a broad market for setting up training, and so I can see the same will happen with hydrogen. It will take the time. You've got to kind of get a bit of a critical mass. Even right now, we're not sending too many technicians for EV training because we're not maintaining that many vehicles ourselves. A lot of them are still under warranty, so we're relying on the dealers. And there's no point in sending people now who may leave the city or may lose those skills between now and the time they need them, right? So it's getting them at the right time as well.
Great. Okay, I know we're really running up on time here, so maybe I'll ask one last question, and I apologize to everyone that's asked a lot of questions in the chats. I know we haven't been able to get to all of them. There's certainly been a flood. We'll make sure to pass these questions on to the panelists, and feel free to reach out to us or the panelists directly just to get connected and have further, further conversations. Yeah, in terms of, Terry, you having experience with these trucks and with these pilots and the equipment themselves, what are your operators saying? What are the users, the day-to-day users saying? Is this a good technology generally, just from a usage standpoint?
Well, and I guess those are the kinds of things that we're trialing in these trials, right? We're taking a look at what does the mechanical part of the trial, how is the vehicle working? How are those vehicles working for industry? What is down? What is going down? There's fuel cells, batteries, and e-drives that are all new. So what percentage of downtime is attributed to those items as opposed to what a conventional truck would be, like a windshield wiper or something like that. So understanding the mechanics and the services, that's something that the drivers, that is a negative for the drivers because right now we don't have mechanics in place. So anytime we've got any kind of mechanical service, then we've got long wait times. That's expected with the new technology though. And as far as the carriers go, the fuel cells run hot. There's simple things like when they stop at the end of the day in the winter, they make a little puddle. So we have to have sand out there to make sure they're saved. They're quiet. How's that going to change a carrier's operation? It's wonderful for the driver who doesn't have that wind noise anymore, but it's a little bit different. And they have torque. They go like a jackrabbit, I've been told. That is the best thing that I've seen. So teaching drivers to drive eco-friendly. They love the vehicles, love being in them, but we have to make sure that we are doing that eco-driving. So there's positives that we're fixing, negatives that we're fixing, just trying to understand what the whole economy is there for those vehicles.
Wonderful. No, I really appreciate that, Terry. It's great to get insights from an organization that actually is making it happen and actually trying out these vehicles. I think we're running up on time, so I'm going to say we should conclude this. I want to thank everybody who attended, virtually attended this, and to all the panelists, thank you so much for taking some time and tell us a little bit about your experiences, what you have planned, and certainly to the blue sky potential here in the Calgary region for hydrogen, and that it is just bigger than a pilot or an individual short-term pilot, that there is a big long-term potential for the private sector to take advantage of. So with that, thanks everyone. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.